Hi, I'm Sienna.
I'm Rashim.
And we're here today to talk to Nari Ward about his new exhibit, Sunsplashed, at the ICA. So we always like to start with, what were you like as a teenager?
I was very much introspective. I didn't have a lot of friends, and I wasn't into sports. I did a lot of reading. Came from Jamaica. We lived briefly in New York. Then we moved to New Jersey, and it was the suburbs of New Jersey. We were like the only black family, right? So there's a sense of being doubly outside, the culturally outside and then kind of racially outsider. And I was about, like I said, around maybe then about 13. And I remember being in class, and I remember feeling a little bit out of sorts. And at one point, I was by myself, sort of doodling and drawing. I think it was a Santa Claus on the drawing board, and all the kids who were doing, they were off in groups. And I remember somebody coming over and saying, "Oh, the new kid's an artist." And that moment, I felt like, "Oh, that's good." You know, I wasn't an artist. They identified me with something, and I identified with that thing as being special.
Who do you think influenced you as an artist, or influenced you to become an artist?
I think my first influences were probably more than ever my teachers. I was lucky enough to run into at least two really important mentors, and they were major and even just directed me. They didn't ask me to do what they did. They saw the talent that they felt was there, and they were just trying to help me figure out how to grow.
So you talked about immigrating from Jamaica, and a lot of your work deals with like the idea of like your homeland and like, or being an outsider here. Do you feel like you're more a Jamaican artist or like a new American artist? Do you feel equally connected to both?
It depends on the day, you know. And the situation. It depends on if I'm traveling. I'm generally pushed into the label, and I mean, the label is there, and people decide to project it on you, right? So when I go way outside of the U.S., I become a Jamaican artist. And when I'm here, I'm an American artist. When I go Jamaican, interestingly enough, because I haven't been there long enough, they still see me as an American artist. So that label I've gotten to not focus on too much. Within my body of work and creative directive, I do use it. I do use it as a way to think about identity and think about experience that I'm trying to open up for the viewer. So there was a moment where I didn't want to be labeled at all as a Jamaican artist or a black artist, and then you have to, at some point, you say, okay, these are the tools I've been offered, and it's just about how you figure out how to engage with them.
On your business card, I've seen that you have the Miranda rights, or what appears to be Miranda rights. Could you tell me why you have that there?
So it's kind of, I've had it early on from the 90s. I always felt awkward about giving out a business card, because you're like, oh, so you're like professional. And for artists, that's not necessarily, that's a thin line. You want to be creative and you want to be free-spirited, and then the notion that you're like a businessman was contradictory. So there's a little tension about, how that sits. So I thought, well, I don't necessarily have to just give out a business card. I can give out a card that has a service connected to it.
I know there are a lot of people who sometimes, like Black Americans, who will say like, you're not Black, like you're Jamaican, as though, that when they see you on the street, you're not asking you for Jamaican, they're looking at you as though you're Black. But I wanted to know what your relationship to Blackness was as like an immigrant.
It happens on all different levels in terms of identity. You're not African American, you're Jamaican, all these other terms. But I think there is an experience that overlaps, which is the African diasporic experience and also the slave experience. So I think those two things are really, in some ways undeniable.
We're sitting in something that's basically you're all responsible for. We're sitting around with your work. Obviously, you've taken
at least over 20 years.
20 years of your life to make such an astounding portfolio of work. So I have to ask you, do you have any advice that you'd give yourself as a younger artist or as a younger person in general? Being
as much in the moment as possible. I think that's the thing, because there is this notion of trying to go and to plan, and that's really key. But really, what you're working on, that intensity of the moment is And if you can keep that intensity in everything you do, and hard work, I feel like that can really build, rungs and platform for you to keep progressing.
Well, we've been working on the We the People piece for the past 2 days. Well, I guess it was one day, and today is another day. But it gives you a lot of time to think when you're like stuffing shoelaces in the wall. How did you think of the piece, and why did you pick shoelaces?
This particular work came out of the idea of using signs. For me, signs are really interesting challenges. Inherent in that symbol is the notion of a kind of monolith, like the meaning is here. This is what a sign is, very clear. It's not meant to be anything but what it is. And I'm excited about the possibility of using that, because then it's like, can I find a way to hijack that content, or take that thing that's supposed to be so hard to break down and create pockets of meaning within it, or a side next to it. So with that in mind, I was working with these other signs, and then it came down to thinking about things that are like signs that we kind of see but don't really think about as much. Right? It's like you almost take it for granted what that means, right? And so the shoelaces were really always about relating to the body, the physical body, in a way that was introducing the body, but then it could be anybody. So when I got down to the shoelaces, it was like, okay, what the text that I wanted to articulate, We the People, what would that mean? What if I scaled it up? What if I really related it to the body in terms of size? And what I liked about that part was that there was a level of abstraction depending on where you are. Its legibility changes. Where you are within the room. From the side, it's almost, you can't quite read what's there. From the front, it's much more legible. And I like that your position in relationship to it changes your ability to understand it. And so conceptually, it really made sense, this idea of how it relates to citizenship.
You work with found materials, and obviously I can see evidence of that. I'm looking around the room right now, and I see many of your works. So I wanted to know, what were your favorite found objects to collect?
I don't always use found objects, but I definitely like and prioritize that in my practice. Because there are moments where I come up with an idea and I said, you know what, if I can get that Chase sign that I saw, or have another one built like it, I have something I want to say about this power system that this symbol represents. So in that case, the Chase sign wasn't a found object, but it's something I saw that triggered an idea, and then I wanted to simulate it. But getting back to your question, like the most exciting thing is probably one of the earlier pieces for me was the baby stroller, because I was obsessed with collecting baby strollers. And I would walk down 125th Street, and I saw this one moment where there was all these people walking by, and somebody had abandoned the baby stroller on the side, just kind of pushed to the side of the walkway. And there was something about that emptiness, and then the flux of people moving around it, that caught that moment for me that was so poignant and strange and mysterious. And so I wanted to figure out how to let people pay attention to that. And I said, well, if this moment I need to turn up the volume on this moment. So I just need to have more. And so I said, if I just collect enough, maybe I can figure out, it'll tell me what I need to do with them. So I went out every day and started collecting them. And every day I'd come in with 3 or 4 or 5 baby strollers that were abandoned.
Well, we're going to move into the lightning round questions, a little more fun, a little less about your work, and more just about how you think about things. Okay, so if you were stranded on an island, what 3 things would you bring?
Water. I mean, you need water, right? So water, I think I want music. Can I have music? Could I have a music? I'd probably just want to have something to grow, some food to grow. I'm thinking about survival. So I think those things would be essential. Fishing, something like that.
If you were to have a Hollywood movie about yourself, what actor would you want to play you?
Though I kind of like LL Cool J's swagger. I think I'd want LL Cool J to play me. I'd go back on that. I think, and he's like anti-me. He's not me. I don't want somebody who's not me. He's kind of got a real swagger, sexualized being, and he can act now. So I think I'd go with that.
Well, this has been Nari Ward and ICA Teens. I'm Rasheen.
I'm Sienna.
Me signing off. Thank you very much and have a nice day.